3 English final exam, fall 2025. Directions: read this passage closely. 2. Respond to all 3 required questions in part 1. 3. Choose 4 questions to answer in part 2. Note, you will have a total of 7 completed answers at the end of your reading and writing exam. Frederick Douglass delivered this speech, often titled, What to a Slave is the 4th of July, on July 5th, 1852, in Crowthian Hall, Rochester, New York, addressing the Rochester Ladies Anti-Slavery Society. This is an excerpt of a longer speech. Fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could only be truthfully returned to these questions. Then would my task be light and my burden easy and delightful. For who is there so cold that a nation's sympathy could not warm him? Who so obdurate and dead to the claims of gratitude that would not thankfully acknowledge such priceless benefits? Who so stolid and selfish that would not give his voice to swell the hallelujahs of the nation's jubilee when the chains of servitude had been torn from his limbs? I am not that man. In a case like that, the dumb might eloquently speak, and the lame man leap as a hart. But such is not the state of the case. I say with sad sense of the disparity between us, I am not included with the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you, this day, rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence, bequeathed by your fathers, is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight has brought life and healing to you, has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice. I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters to the grand illuminated temple of liberty, to call upon him to join in joyous anthems, were inhumane mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? If so, there is a parallel to your conduct, and let me warn you that it is dangerous to copy the example of a nation whose crimes, lowering up to heaven, were thrown down by the breath of the Almighty, burying the nation to irreconcilable return. I can run today to talk to the plaintive lament of a peeled and woe-smitten people. By the rivers of Babylon, they were sat down. Yeah, we wept and we remembered Zion. We hanged by our harps on the willows and mischief therefore. For therefore they carried us away captive, required us a song, and they who wasted required us mirth singing. Sing us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. If I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions. I whose chains heavy and grievous yesterday are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. If I do forget, if I do not faithfully remember those bleeding children of sorrow to this day, may my right hand forget her cunning, and may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. To forget them, to pass lightly over their wrongs, and to chime with popular theme would be most treason, most scandalous and shocking, and would make me reapproach God and the world. My subject and fellow citizens is American slavery. I shall see this day its popular characteristics from the slave's point of view, standing there identified with American bondman, making his wrongs mine. I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked bleaker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or the professions of the present, and the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting, America is a false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly blinds herself to the false of the future. Standing with God and the crushed, bleeding slave on this occasion, I, in the name of humanity which is outraged, in the name of liberty which is fettered, in the name of Constitution and the Bible, which are regarded and trampled upon, dare to call into question and to denounce, with all the emphasis I can command, everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not evacuate. I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command, and not one word shall escape me on any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice, or whose heart is not a slaveholder, shall confess to be right and just. But I fancy I hear some of my audience say, it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists failed to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But I submit, whereas all that plain is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? On what branch of the subject do people of this country need light? Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? That point is conceded already. Nobody doubts it. The slaveholders themselves acknowledge the enactment of laws for their government. They acknowledge that when they punish the disobedience on the part of the slave, there are no 72 crimes in the state of Virginia which, if committed by a black man, no matter how ignorant he be, subject him to the punishment of death, while only 2 of the same crimes will subject a white man to the like punishment. But what is but the acknowledgement that a slave is a moral, intellectual, responsible being? The manhood of the slave is conceded. It is admitted in the fact that the Southern statute books are covered with enactments forbidding, under several fines and penalties, that the teaching of a slave to read or write. While you cannot point to any such laws in reference to the beasts of the field, then I may be content to argue manhood of the slave. When the dogs in the streets, in your streets, when the fowls in the air, when the cattle in your hill, when the fish of the sea, and the reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from a brute, then I will argue with you that the slave is a man. For the present is enough to affirm the equal manhood of the race. It is not astonishing that while we are plowing, planting, reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, ciphering, acting as clerk, merchants, secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, teachers, that while we are engaged in the manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living in families as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian's God, and looking hopefully for life and immortality beyond the grave, we are called upon to prove that we are men. Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty, that he is a rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is that a question for Republicans? It is to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation. It is a matter of beset with great difficulty, involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice, hard to be understood. How should I look today in the presence of Americans, dividing and subdividing a discourse to show that men have the natural right to freedom? Speaking of it relatively and positively, negatively and affirmatively. To do so would to make myself ridiculous, and to offer an insult to your understanding. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him. What am I to argue that is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow men, to beat them with sticks, to flay their flesh with the lash, to load their limbs with iron, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission with their masters, must I argue that the system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not. I have better employments for my time and my strength than such arguments would apply. What then remains to be argued? Is it that slavery is not divine, that God did not establish it, that our doctors of divinity were mistaken? There is blasphemy in the thought. That is which is inhumane cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? They can, I may not. The time for such argument has passed. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, I had the ability, and I could reach the nation's ear. I would, today, pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it's not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need storm, the whirlwind, the earthquake. The feeling of a nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The property of the nation must be settled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed. And its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. You boast liberty and unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity. The sounds of your rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery, your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, and petty and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than there are the people of the United States at this very hour. Go to where you may search, where you will, roam through the monarchies and despotions of the old world. Travel through South America, search out every abuse, and you will have found at last. Lay your facts by the side of every practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, Americans reign without rival.